My name is Gary Smith, and I will be running this event, as I mentioned earlier. Now, one thing important about the Dale Carnegie Course is that it's very participatory. We always have the participants up and doing something, and we're going to do that tonight. Tonight, we'd like you to have the actual experience of what it's like to be in a Dale Carnegie course. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you all to stand up and walk around and introduce yourself to everybody else in the room. But there's a special way that we're going to do this. You're going to walk up to someone and introduce yourself while you're looking at the next person that you're going to meet. Right? Oh, hi, that's good. It's good to see you. How are you? Nice to meet you. Oh, how are you? It's good to see you. How are you doing? Okay? So this is the way you're gonna introduce yourself like you really don't care about the person. Okay? Any questions? Good. Please stand up and introduce yourselves. Thank you. Imagine that you're walking down the street and you see one of your best friends that you haven't seen for 10 years. And go up and greet them. Stand up and do that now. What was different between the first style and the second style?
The length of the time we speak to the person.
Okay. And how did you feel?
Happy, much happier.
Engaged.
Engaged? Good, good. Do we do this on a regular basis?
Yeah.
Do you interact with people like that?
Even people I meet for the first time, I
Yeah.
tend to, well, I didn't really do it. I tend to, what I mean to people on a one-to-one basis, I tend to be as friendly as possible.
Good, good, that's excellent. How does that help you in your role, in your work?
Breaking the ice.
It breaks the ice, right? How about the rest of us? Do we do this on a regular basis?
Maybe not.
Okay. Would it help you if you did?
I think it can help me to improve the communications and also relationships.
What's different?
You care about the other person, you're thinking about the other person.
Exactly. You're showing them that you are interested, that you're engaged. Engaged is a great word. And that's one of the things we focus on in this course, is engagement. Being engaged with the people that we're talking to. And we'll go over that. So how else can this approach help you in your business?
You know, come across as more sincere.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody you want to do business with, keep in contact with.
Yeah, thank you. How else?
I think the energy is different.
How is that?
So I think you're sort of projecting more into the conversation
Yeah.
rather than kind of bypassing it.
Yeah.
So I think that just gets reflected back more
Okay.
naturally. So I think there's something about breaking down the barriers and starting a conversation.
Right. How does that help? Where's the benefit?
You're better remembered, probably.
Yeah,
Remembered
absolutely.
as a friendly and nice person.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. How else does it help you?
People will look forward to seeing you, so that they'll look forward to your interaction.
Good. And also, the energy is really key, because if you bring energy to the equation, that other person will pick up on it. And you can raise the energy level around you by bringing energy into it. This is an example of how the Dale Carnegie Course is run. We do things, we discuss them. You bring your ideas, because I don't have all the answers. And you'd be really bored if I were the only one giving the answers. So we'll always be asking for your participation, your discussion, your comments, and definitely your questions. Because a lot of people, and I think you said you've read the books
Yes, that's right.
a number of times. Is there anything in those books that you thought was just kind of out there?
There are some chapters which I cared more about than others. I can see the value of everything, but
Good.
I'm sorry if that's evasive.
Not at all. We'll pin you down during the course. Has anybody heard negative things about the Dale Carnegie Course? Do you know people that didn't like it? That's good. Well, then maybe I shouldn't say this. I know people who say, well, I don't know, it's kind of like a religion. You know, people are like, they think it's the most fabulous thing in the world. Well, I mean, some people do think it's the most fabulous thing in the world. And then there are others who think, well, no, I just don't want to go that far. And what we find through the course is that by trying things, you will find, again, some of the chapters that really suit the way you look at life. And you'll find things that are really, really good for you, that work really well for you. And you'll find others that are either more difficult or you're not as comfortable using. And that's fine. As you go through this process, if you have questions about something and you don't think it'll work, bring it up. Because I can guarantee there are examples where it doesn't work. And then there are examples where maybe it worked just a little bit. And then the question is, well, was it worth that effort to get, say, a 10% response? And those are the things that we'll talk about during the course. So to help you find out and think for yourselves as to whether it's valuable or not. Now just quickly to go into some of the background. Dale Carnegie the first program was established in 1912. So they celebrated their 100th anniversary last year in the United States. In Japan, it was started in, this is a year old, it was started in 50 years ago. This is the 50th anniversary for Japan this year. And it's, the course is in 86 countries, 30 different languages. So it's very, very widely known and very widely adopted. Within Japan, there's been, or sorry, throughout the world, there's been over 8 million participants. In Japan, there's been over 80,000. And do you recognize any of these names up here? There's some very well-known Japanese businessmen who are supporters of the Dale Carnegie program. And they will give you affidavits for the program. Does anybody know this man? Warren Buffett? Never heard of Warren Buffett? No.
Yes, I'm kidding.
He's not very well known, I agree. This was actually on iTunes. You can find this video if you want, which he talks about his business and all that. But during this video, one of the things he brings up is his participation in the Dale Carnegie program. For him, he says it is one of the most important lessons he learned in life. It's one of the most valuable training he's ever gone through. And the reason he says that is because he now knows he can get people to do work for him. He can get them to voluntarily or optimistically or proactively do work for him, as opposed to being domineering and commanding. And he says that's one of the most valuable trainings that he's ever gone through. You're familiar with the books, I assume? There's the How to Win Friends and Influence People. Has anybody read any of the other books? How to Stop Worrying and Start Living.
I did many years ago.
Yeah, okay. And then there's a book about public speaking. And then a number of small pamphlets. All of these will be included in the course. So over this 8-week course, you end up reading 3 very valuable business books and a number of other materials as well that will support you in being more engaging, more enthusiastic, better communicators. That's part of the things that you'll get through the course. Over 90% of the Fortune 500 companies use or have used the Dale Carnegie program. In the program, we focus on what we call 5 drivers of success. Does anybody in this room feel they need better self-confidence? Okay, good. Would anybody like stronger people skills? Okay. Does anybody need to improve their communication skills? Pretty good, okay. How about developing better leadership skills? There we go, someone that's on board with this. And also, how about reducing stress and improving your attitude? Yeah. These are what we focus on in the course. The 5 drivers of success. And what we'll ask each of you to do is to fill out a questionnaire and get very specific about where you see yourself improving your self-confidence. Specifically, what are the areas where you need to have better confidence, and how will that confidence improve your work situation, improve your success, help you achieve your goals? And for each of you, it will be different. And based on that information, when you're in the course, and I'm one of the trainers for the course, when we coach you, for example, if you say, I want to feel more comfortable standing in front of people. When you're giving reports, I will work with you to help you feel and show that you're more comfortable when standing in front of people. Or if you say, I want to be more dynamic when I'm talking to people, then we'll work on techniques to make you confident to be more dynamic standing in front of people. So we'll tailor the program to each one of your needs as we go through it. So what are the areas where you need to improve self-confidence, and why will that help you specifically in your job? Same with people skills, same with communication skills, leadership skills. Okay, so these are things that we'll define as we go through the course. And as I said earlier, Dale Carnegie is all about getting involved and doing things. And we focus on something called the cycle of performance improvement. Now, we just identified earlier Everybody wants to improve their self-confidence, their communication. We have identified that you have the need, the want, and the will. You have the right attitude to learn. You just demonstrated that. We have knowledge that we'll share about engaging with people, interacting with people, how to build better relationships with people. The issue then we get to is the knowledge trap. What do you think that is?
Maybe you think you know enough and you leave it there, you sort of plateau.
Good, good. What else?
Yeah, maybe people will be satisfied with just knowing
Yeah.
and not doing.
That's it exactly, yeah. And it's very common. I mean, I've done it myself. I've read the books many, many times and then never thought about applying. Oh, I do this already. And I never thought about actively, proactively, consciously trying to use one of those principles. In this course, we will require that you adopt and use the principles. You will go home and use them and then come back here and give us a report on how it worked. You know, was it 100% successful? Was it only a little bit successful? Maybe it didn't work at all. But you will hear your own story, you'll give your own story, and you'll hear the story of everybody else in the classroom, 15, 16 people. And you'll see evidence of how these principles can be used and how they work, where they're successful, what kind of effects or results you can expect from them. So that's the practice. And the coaching is when you're up here giving a report, and I stop you again and again and again, and I say, okay, this is good. Let's speak a little bit more slowly. Okay, this is really good, but show us some passion. Was this emotional for you? Show us that emotion and push you to do things and say things in ways that you never have before. I can tell by looking at you that all of you have experience speaking in front of other people. You have confidence. I mean, you're all very mature, professional, very experienced. So you're going to come up here and give great reports. So I'm going to stop you and say, you can do that well. So you don't need to do it that way anymore. We don't need to practice that. Let's practice something entirely different so that you're always going to be challenged in the class. And to be honest, not all of it works. A lot of it is an experiment. Not a lot of it. There are elements of it that are experiments. Because I'll see things in you that you aren't doing, that you haven't tried. And I'll say, well, let's take a step and try that. And I'll coach you into doing things. And what you'll see, you might feel like this is very uncomfortable when you do it. But you'll see the rest of the people in the class going, wow, that was really good. That was really powerful. That was really moving. And you'll get feedback, not just from me, but from the other participants in the class. So you'll have confidence that what you're doing is right, looks good, and can be effective. And then you'll get this feedback, that accountability, you'll get the support. And you'll feel excited then to go on and continue pursuing the whole cycle of improvement. So that's something that we will do. And we're going to start with something that we do in the program itself. It's as simple as self-introductions. Now, we've all been in Japan for a while. Good evening, welcome. We've all been in Japan for a while. I think we're all familiar when we introduce ourselves to a Japanese person and they say, 私は鈴木です。私は山本です。私は小林です。And we have no idea what they're saying. We can't hear their name. And if you're like me, you didn't know any Japanese names besides Honda and Sony. You didn't know these names. So you couldn't pick them up. You find that we do it as well. Hi there, my name is Gary Smith. Hey, Gary Smith here. Yeah. And people aren't catching the name, not having any impact. So what we have is this process called the 3 Ps. And it starts with, my name is, and then a pause before your first name. And then a part, so that it's clearly, distinctly identifiable what your first name is and what your last name is. And then we say the last name with some punch, some power to it. My name is Gary Smith. And there's no question that people are going to understand and recognize, okay, it is an easy name to remember, but still, it works. Now we're going to try this one at a time. I'm going to ask you to come up, use the 3 Ps. And I'm going to ask you also to allow me to coach you. So I may stop you, or I may say, let's do it a different way. Okay. Are you happy with me coaching you, at least for tonight? Is that okay? I have to have your permission. I won't do it without your permission. Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, good. Why don't we start with Rick? Now, just by using this technique, what kind of impact could it have on your work environment?
You give a much better first impression.
I think you do. And how do people react?
Remember easier?
It's easier for them to remember. That's good. And how else do they react?
Pay attention. You've got credibility with them.
Why do you have credibility?
Confidence.
You do look like you have confidence. Exactly. Good.
You come across as being more sincere as well. You're thinking of other people because you're speaking slower and taking the time to do it correctly rather than just rushing it through.
That's good. Yeah, that's a very good point. You're actually showing the people you respect them. You're showing them that you care about you're using their time. You're not wasting their time. That's good. It's very important. So again, these are the kinds of discussions that we have during the course. Okay? We do talk about things a bit more deep than just introducing yourself, but this is one of the ones that we go over. Now, the next thing we're going to do tonight is actually what is part of session 1 also. And we're going to learn a method that helps us connect with others and build better relationships with others. We're going to start with some of the principles, the Dale Carnegie principles. And we're going to use a tool that helps us to remember things. This is called the memory linking technique. And it starts off with the idea that the mind thinks in terms of pictures. If I say Tokyo Tower, what do you see in your mind?
Tokyo Tower.
Tokyo Tower. Do you see the letters T-O-K-Y-O, T-O-W-E-R? Some people do. It's not completely unknown. But yeah, we see in pictures. Now, the more exaggerated that picture is, the easier it is to remember. So think of a big, cartoony Tokyo Tower with that platform on the top 10 times the size of the base. And it's got a more memorable image to it. And then we link something to that picture to help us remember. And we're going to practice this tonight. This is based on what we call the permanent peg memory system. We start off, we have an idea that we want to remember. It's the concept. And then we take a number, a permanent peg number, attach to it a word, a permanent peg word, and then relate that word to a picture. And that picture is going to then be tied into the concept. So always remember. So we'll start off. We're only going to do 3 tonight, so it's going to be very, very easy for you. I promise you'll remember. Repeat after me. 1, run.
1, run.
2, zoo.
2, zoo.
3, tree.
3, tree.
What's 2?
Zoo.
What's 1?
Run.
What's 3?
Tree.
What's 2?
Zoo.
What's 1?
Run.
What's 3?
Tree.
What's 2? What's 2?
Zoo.
Good. What's 1?
Run.
What's 3?
3.
Good. Now, that's the number and the word. You got them? What's 2?
Zoo.
Good. What's 3?
Tree.
What's 1?
Run.
Good. Now, imagine you're at the horse races, and all the horses are lined up at the starting gate. Big, beautiful day, sunny day, nice, gorgeous, verdant green, and then the track is this deep, dark brown. And then the starting gun goes off, and all the horses come breaking out of the gate, except one. Lovely, white, bright white horse goes running backwards out of the gate. And it has a saddle on its back. And on the saddle is something. What's the number?
1.
1. What's the word?
Run.
What's the image? What's the picture?
white horse running backwards with something on it, with a saddle and something on it.
Sounds something on it, right? Good. 2. 2.
Zoo.
Yeah, you got it. Come on, everybody. Good. You're at the zoo and you're in front of the monkey cage. And there are hundreds of monkeys all sitting there playing and doing monkey things. And then suddenly all the monkeys turn and throw something at you. What's the number?
2.
Okay. What's the word?
Zoo.
What's the picture?
Monkeys throwing something at you.
Monkeys in the monkey cage throwing something at you. Good. 3.
Tree.
Huge, huge tree. This thing's probably 150 meters tall and probably 40, 50 meters around the base. Huge tree. And it's bending all the way over until it almost touches the ground. And it's bending over because there's this huge something on top of it weighing it down. Okay, what's the number?
3.
What's the word?
Tree.
What's the image?
Something bringing it down.
Something bringing what down? Be more, exaggerate, exaggerate. Show the picture.
Something pushing the tree down,
Right.
bending the tree down.
Something really big and heavy on the top of the tree. Okay. Now, this is a way to remember, oops, I forgot to change that, peg words 1 to 3. This is a way to remember the Dale Carnegie principles. And we're going to do the first 3 tonight. The Dale Carnegie principles are divided into 3 main categories. And the first 9 categories is all about, or the first nine principles are about enhancing relationships. What does it mean to enhance a relationship?
Make it bigger, better.
Make it better? Okay, good. What's the difference between rapport and indifference?
It's the 2 kind of role play we did at the very beginning.
Good, yeah, it's a good example. Good, good. How can it hurt your work if all your relationships have indifference? How can it help hurt you?
People will not want to work with you.
Why not?
They would rather work with people that they have good rapport with.
Good. Why?
Because it's more fun.
Okay, why? Why?
Because people like to be with like-minded individuals and working towards a goal,
Mhm.
towards doing something.
Good, well done. That's very well put. The first 9 relationships are about building rapport. We want people to like us. And one of the key concepts behind the Dale Carnegie Course is that we cannot change people. We can only change ourselves. And by changing ourselves, we can encourage people to react differently to how we operate, how we act. So what we want to do here is get people to like us better, to build rapport with them. And we do that by getting them to like us. So, on the back of the horse, the saddle, the white horse running down backwards in the horse race, are 3 C's stacked on top of the saddle. And those C's stand for don't criticize, condemn, or complain. First principle. Second principle, monkeys in the monkey cage, hundreds of them, are throwing sincere flowers of appreciation, or flowers of sincere appreciation at you. These big, gorgeous bouquets of roses that the monkeys are throwing at you to show just how much they appreciate you. Arouse in the other person an eager want. On top of this huge tree, weighing it down and bending it over, is a wanted sign. Just like out of the West in Texas. Wanted, dead or alive. Hopefully alive. Arouse in the other person an eager want. How can using these principles help you build more rapport, better rapport with the people you work with? Or the opposite, how would you increase indifference by not using these principles? Let's get into 2 groups. 3 of you here? 3 of you here? Take 5 minutes in your group and talk about how those principles can affect your work life. if you use them, if you don't use them. Okay, any questions? Okay, you three are together? Okay, good, thank you. Let's come back to the front now. You can stay in your groups, but we're going to have a report from each group. And what did you hear that was interesting? And which of these do you think would be the most difficult to use? Let's start over here. What did you hear in your group that was interesting?
Interesting is that about the second point.
Yes?
There was some opinion about the appreciation. If you do look for appreciations, I think even if you like have something, some advice for you to add some improvement.
Mm-hmm.
If it is like 90% appreciation, 10% advice for improvement, the emotional bank account will be positive.
Okay.
So
Right.
not only urging them to improve by the but not only giving them the positive impression about yourself. Also, you can better urge themselves to them to improve.
Interesting. I like it. Good. What else did you hear?
She had a very good point about on number one, don't criticize, condemn, or complain, that it's linked to maturity, and that more mature people know that those are very negative and non-beneficial traits, whereas mature people realize that those are not good.
Right. So if you are complaining, then people will look at you like, oh, he's not so mature.
Right.
Oh, good. Excellent, good point. What else? Which of these did you think would be most difficult?
I think the third one.
Why?
Because how to say, they have own feeling, and they have own their own interests.
Right.
And how to say, we don't know where is the bottom to our of the interest.
Right. Good. That's a very good point. We'll come back to that. What did you hear over here? But well done, guys. That was really good. Over here.
Peter's had a good point about the importance of this in Japan in particular, and particularly thinking about point one there about not criticizing, not condemning, or complaining all the time.
Right. Why is that important?
Maybe touching on maturity, but also your own integrity, and that constantly seen as pushing off onto other people problems and mistakes, and your sort of value is going down in the eyes of the other person you're engaging with.
This is why I really like getting feedback, because I've never looked at it from that angle. Both of you came up with ideas and approaches that I hadn't really thought of before. For me, it's always been, how does the other person respond when you criticize them? The first response is, man, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. And that's the way I've always seen it. That's always been the big one. To think that I might look less than respectable or responsible because I'm criticizing or condemning. I think it's a great point. That's why I like getting this feedback from you all. You are going to know more about some of these things than I will. Good. What else did you hear?
I think there's just something interesting about Japan and like a focus on means and not ends.
Yes.
And just kind of the form of how we communicate and the form of how you build group relationships. And it's not, I've worked in other markets as well where it's much more merit-based. So as long as you bring something valuable to the group, you are tolerated. As long as you do that job, it's fine. But in Japan, there's just much more sensitivity towards, being somebody that isn't negative, but also somebody that is appreciative and kind of offering positive, constructive, being someone who's moving things forward as opposed to kind of slowing things down.
Good.
The other point actually that was brought up, which I thought was interesting, was about the idea of arousing want.
Yeah.
And I hadn't read it like that, because when I read arouse want, it was kind of like, you've identified a need in a customer and sort of how do we solve that, and we have these tools, and we have this way, and so on. But the way we talked about it also was the idea of kind of just wanting to actually develop a relationship further with somebody. So actually not essentially a need kind of thing, but actually something which is like, I want to know more about this person. I want to develop. I want to hear more from this person.
Right.
And that sort of sense of a want, not as concrete, but actually maybe just as valuable.
Good. And it's great because we didn't go to principle number 4, but principle number 4 is show a genuine interest in other people. And it does exactly what you just described. and what you brought up as well, you have to know what that person wants before you can arouse a want in them. You've got to learn how to talk from that other person's interest so that they are excited to talk to you. They want to talk to you. They know that you're going to listen. They know that you're going to take an interest in them, so they want to share things with you. And based on that knowledge, you go, wow, this guy's really interested in this. And we've got a job opportunity, or we've got a project we're working on where that kind of enthusiasm would be really valuable. That's how we can use those things. Which did you think would be very difficult to use?
Second.
Why?
Because, like you said, in Japan it's all about, not the final result, but how you bring it, right?
Sure.
And it feels like it's a little bit more sensitive than elsewhere, where it's like, okay, that was crap. So, okay, then
Right.
you go straight forward, okay?
Right.
And working with foreigners, it's much more straightforward. Whereas in Japan, it's like what you said, it's good, but there's a but after that, and
Yes.
it's giving appreciation even if you disagree with what is brought up.
Right.
It's probably difficult.
Right. And you're talking actually about something we do later on in the course, which is called learning to disagree agreeably.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought up something in your discussion that I picked up on. What's the difference between criticizing and critiquing? And an important thing to remember about this, it does not mean you cannot correct somebody if they're doing the wrong thing. It just means be sensitive to how you're doing it, how you're talking to them. I mean, do you need to criticize someone because they made a mistake? Or can you help that person correct that mistake and still feel good about what they're doing and still have a good relationship with you? And that's what these principles are about. And again, as I said earlier, you're not going to find that all of these apply all the time everywhere. And you're going to find sometimes where it's really difficult for you personally to apply them because you're a human, you're responding emotionally. So and these things have to be balanced. And we all do that on a daily basis. But the key behind these principles is that you're going to interact with people in a way that they're going to like you more. And because they like you more, they're going to be more willing to talk to you, more willing to listen to you, and more willing to share ideas with you, and more open to your own ideas. Which then leads to the next stage, which is gaining cooperation. So we use the first 9 principles to build a better relationship with a person, so that once we have that better relationship in place, we find ways to encourage them to cooperate with us and do the things that we want them to do. And building on that, we find ways to show people that we can be strong leaders that they can trust. We already know they like us, and we already know that they're willing to work with us. And finally, what do we need to do so that they're willing to follow us? And that's what the program is focused on. So those are the things that we try and share with you. Now, we're going to actually give a report tonight, each one of us. We all have our own experiences that we want to share with other people. And Dale Carnegie says very, very accurately, the easiest thing to talk about is yourself. And not only that, you are the only person who has the right to do it, because you're talking about yourself. Okay. So we're going to work on a report tonight. We'll do it in 1 minute. They'll be short reports. But it's going to be a report about something important in your life. Something important that you learned, something you experienced, something you saw, somebody you know, that was a turning point. We call this defining moment report. So we're going to talk about something that changed our life. And we're going to think about how we look as we give this report. I mentioned earlier that we do a lot of coaching in this program. Tonight, all my coaching is going to focus mostly on how you look. Only because it's one of the easiest things to coach for. And it's also one of the easiest differences for you to see. During the course, we'll talk about, okay, what's the point? Why did you do that? What was your goal? What were you thinking? What were you trying to achieve? So we're putting things in more of a strategic context when we're talking about, when we're coaching you. But tonight, we're just going to focus on appearance. So what we want to do with tonight's report is encourage people to take action. One of the most difficult tasks from any kind of report. And to do that, we're going to use this formula. It's called the magic formula. And it starts with evidence. And in this case, it's a personal incident. What was a defining moment in your life? Okay? So that's the story. That's the evidence. And then we finish with an action and a benefit. And the action is what we want all of our audience to do. Right? I want you to do this. And the reason I want you to do this is the benefit. Okay? So at the end of the report, you're going to say, everybody, please do this. Because if you do it, this is the benefit you'll get. Okay? Are you clear on the format? Any questions about the format?
Sorry, can you just clarify action again?
Yes, yes. I will give you an example, but please, everybody. Wait, let's go. There we go. That was not well done, was it? Please, everybody, be sure you let people know how grateful you are. Because if you do, they will be there when you need them again. That's action. Let them know how grateful you are. Give honest, sincere appreciation. Because if you do, the benefit is that they will be there for you when you need them again. Now, this is going to come from your own experience, so you'll have your own action benefit. It'll be based on something you learned. Another question? Okay, here's an example. I was standing over my father's grave. He had died about 3 months ago, and I wasn't there for the funeral. I was there with my mother. She literally falls on her knees and says, I just want to crawl in there with him. My father was a great man. He was very outgoing, friendly. He remembered everybody's name. He was a leader. He was a leader in the community. He was a leader in the church. Died at 63. And my mother was just destroyed. She didn't know what to do. She'd never taken a lead. She'd never been the driver of the family. She'd always been the follower. She didn't know what to do, and she didn't want to continue living. But my mother never gave up. She got a part-time job working in a convenience store kind of place. She began doing volunteer work at the local hospital. She did a lot of volunteer work and helped organize things at the church. She found out that she was elected president of the volunteer organization at the hospital, organizing 300 people. She was elected president of the parish council 2 years running in our church. She ended up with this enormous network of friends. And when she finally passed away, some 18 years later, the church was packed with all the people that she'd worked with, gotten to know, helped, organized with, volunteered with. She had a community of people that was larger than anything my father had ever put together. And what I learned is that you don't give up and you keep pursuing your dream. And if you do that, then you will find you can do things and achieve things you never knew were possible. That's how this works. Okay? It's a start with a story about yourself. And what did you learn about yourself? And then what can we learn from your story? What can we learn that'll help us? So let's take 5 minutes. We'll take 6. We'll go until 8 o'clock. And write down some ideas about what your report is. Who has a question?
Can I ask you just a general question?
Sure.
Just about, it's curious for me, like, I mean, the Dale, I don't actually know much about Dale Carnegie, I haven't read the books,
Okay.
or so on, so I'm sort of very new to this.
Fine.
But one question I have is, something like a personal incident, an anecdote or something like that.
Yes.
Very personal story. I do find that's an amazingly good way to get people's attention, get people
Yes,
engaged,
it
and
is.
so on. But I actually find sometimes in Japan, I've seen our chairman from Singapore come in and sort of go, hey, here's pictures of my family, this is who I am as a guy,
Yeah,
this
good
is
point.
me, I'm
Yeah.
a kite surfer, and all the rest of it. And the Japanese audience, 400 people just kind of stare there looking at these slides going, I have no idea what to think about this. And because they're not expecting.
Thanks, kite surfing was my topic, thanks a lot.
Well, no, sorry, kite surfing is a great story, I mean, don't get me wrong, but it's just one of those things where I just find it really interesting because
Good point.
when you get really personal in Japan, sometimes I think there's some people that just aren't very comfortable with that.
And I agree. I don't think it's just Japan
Yeah.
either. I think it's probably true in almost any culture that you would go to. And I think one of the keys here is that people understand why you told that story. And that's where the action benefit, in this particular case, that's where the action benefit is important. Because there's a reason for you to tell that story. And if it's just like, oh, here's my dog, and this is my, my dog's cuddly toys that it sleeps with, and this is the blanket that my dog has.
Right.
Nobody cares. Well, no, dog lovers will care. That's fine. You can talk about
No, just kidding.
but that's a really good point.
I'm standing at a podium, the majestic Hudson River's behind me.
Good gestures.
I'm on West Point Military Academy.
Good.
I'm about to talk to the Secretary of State.
Good. Excellent. Let's put our hands down when we're not using them.
The Secretary of State about U.S. foreign policy. I'm
Good,
Canadian.
good. This is excellent. You're doing a very good job.
Okay.
Can I ask everybody to stand up? Thank you all. You did a fantastic job. It is not easy to respond to coaching. But each one of you did, and each one of you showed improvement and more power in your speaking, in your report. So that was very well done. Give yourselves a hand.